Hey folks, welcome to another bi-weekly Rock Your Brand live stream. Today we're going to be talking about logo style guidelines. And wow, we've already got people on the chat, which is awesome. Hey Tossin, hey David, thanks for joining so quickly. Probably broken a record there for getting onto the stream like super quick, which is awesome. Um, yeah, as I say, we're going to talk about logo guidelines today and take a look at some examples. And hey, Mobius, and also look at because I've had a question a couple of times now about choosing colors for logos. Hey, MD, I'm good. I hope you are too. Yeah, you timed the stream well, Tuss, and thanks. Good for you. Um, yeah, one of the questions I've had is, how do I choose colors for logo guidelines or for logos? Because you've got obviously Pantone, CMYK, and RGB/hexadecimal, and how do I go about choosing those? And I think different designers do it in different ways. So I'm going to show the way I do it. It may not be the way that others do it, but it's how I do it, and it's a process that I follow, and it seems to work okay. Hey Fuad, thanks for joining. So, yeah, and then for the second half of the stream, we'll take a look at a couple of logos which have been submitted by some YouTube subscribers, and we'll have a little conversation about those and where we think they may be improved upon, what we like about them, what we don't like about them. So, as per usual, I have technology set up to try and share different views with you in software and hardware and tools that I use, and things always go wrong. If you've been on my stream before, things always go wrong, but that's the exciting thing, is what will go wrong. So I've actually got my iPhone set up this week, which you can see here. So we'll get a top-down view like this. So here's my hands. So we'll get a top-down view, hopefully, which is decent this week, so that I can show you Pantone books and the Swatchos deck, which I use for when I'm choosing color. So let's kind of discuss, what are logo guidelines. So the first thing to say is that people call them different things. So, you get logo style guides, logo guidelines, logo book, and then you'll also get brand guidelines and brand styles, brand book, brand master guide. And the terms are all used interchangeably. And for me, when I'm talking about logo guidelines, they are specifically just for the logo, so it covers just the logo. When I talk about brand guidelines, then that's the wider brand identity. So that will cover things like photography, how the logo is used, the brand tone of voice, messaging, brand values, brand mission, brand vision. So for me, the brand guidelines are a much bigger, more expansive book, and I'll show you an example of that, of one which I have created for one of my clients. I'll also show you some examples of logo guidelines as well. Nicole saying, glad your Wi-Fi cooperated today. Yes, I did a speed test before I started this stream. For anyone that doesn't know, this topic should have happened last week, but it didn't because my internet was not playing ball. So, hi Zakaria, thanks for joining. And the internet just was not playing ball, and so I had to postpone the stream to this week. So it's looking okay. So everyone keep their fingers crossed, and then it goes okay. So as I say, so logo guidelines are specifically for logos. Now, why do you need them? Well, anyone who is a logo designer may have had experiences in the past or recently, where you create a logo, really happy with it, client signs off on it, all good. You create some logo files and you send them off to the client. And then maybe, a little while down the road, you see what the client is doing with the beautiful logo that you've designed, and it doesn't look like the logo you designed anymore. It could be for multiple reasons. It could be that they've changed colors, or they've resized elements of it, or they've, it's being used on a background where the logo can't be seen properly. So the job of logo guidelines really is just that. They're guidelines on how the logo should be used to maintain its visual clarity, and also that it remains consistent in its usage throughout different platforms. So it might be digital, it might be in print, it might be on clothing, embroidery. So you want to kind of give the client a set of guidelines that they can follow, so that if they're not coming back to you for design materials and they're just passing the logo on to someone else, for example, they can pass the logo guidelines on at the same time as they pass on the logo file. Now, there's no guarantee that even if you create logo guidelines, they're going to be used, but you can only do so much. So it's always better to create these guidelines and give them to your client and say, well, this is the best I can do. It would be my advice that you follow these guidelines whenever the logo is used. And if you give your logo to someone, maybe they're sponsoring an event and their logo is going to be printed in a magazine or on a flag or a poster or whatever, send the guidelines, and that will tell the person who's working with your logo how the logo should and should not be used. As I say, some people follow the guidelines and some don't, but there's only so much you can do. For me, I always create a set of logo guidelines as part of a package. So when I've finished the logo and the client is happy with it, I will create the logo guidelines. I will create a logo file package of the logo in all the different file formats that they would ever need, and I will put them all together into a folder, and I will give that to the client. So I'm just going to have a quick look, show you some examples of guidelines that I use. Let's look at my desktop. So this is, I do two, when it comes to logo guidance, I kind of do two versions. I do one where certain elements have a page to themselves, and then I do a more condensed version, which is a one-sheet one. So this is an example of just a simple set of logo guidelines that I did actually for my sister for her cake making business. And we recently worked on her logo and updated it. And so we'll just quickly run through what I do with these. So the first section is the logo and any alternatives that it has. So that might be, you might have a primary version of the logo, which is used, you want to be used mostly, but there may be some situations where a different version of the logo is being created. It may be that the logo, the primary logo is quite long, and so you need to create a stacked version that will be used where space is a bit tight. And so there's a secondary option, or it might be that you have a single color version and you have a full color version, or one which has, you might have a version of the logo that's got a sense of depth to it. Maybe it uses gradients or something, and you just have different versions. You want to outline those in the logo guidelines as well, just so that the client has can see the different versions that they should be using. So here I've got the primary version, which, as you can see, is actually, in this case, the primary version of the logo is black and white. And then the logo is actually supported with a color palette. But there is a version of the logo which is in color as well. So that would be an alternative version. So this is the logo here. As you can see, it's kind of a fun looking logo. It's meant to look like a sort of a slice of cake with some crumbs here. My sister is called Leanne, but she gets called Lan, so it's cakes that landed. That's the name of our business. This is the inverted one, single color. You should always show how that looks. And sometimes as well, when you're doing an inverted version of a logo, just the way that optics work, white on black, it can seem, especially text can seem thicker. So you need to sometimes optically adjust the logo a little bit, just thin things down, but you can play that by eye. With this type of logo where the text is really quite thick, you don't notice it so much. But if you've got some thin text, so let's say you've got thin text on black on white, when you move to white on black, that thin text may look like it's thicker, so you might need to just put a black path around it to thin it down so that they balance up when you see the inverted and the non-inverted version. Let's see. Then we've got an alternate version here where the logo is rounded to look like a round cake. So my sister does novelty cakes, but she also does wedding cakes. And so this alternate version would probably get used more sort of in a wedding situation, because it looks more like the tier, looking down on the tier of a wedding cake, which are normally, they can be round most of the time. And then we've got this one, which is, as I mentioned earlier, this is a color version where you can see icing on it and it looks more cake-like. So this is, a more fun approach to the logo, less corporate. And we use this on stickers and things like that. She has it printed on t-shirts. So there's a different feeling to this one, as opposed to this one. The logos look the same in terms of, where the text is and stuff, but it just gives a different feeling, a different personality, and you can use that when it comes to that here. Then I move on to logo usage. So what I'll do is I'll say, depending on the color of background, you want to make sure that the contrast of the logo is high so that it shows up well. So here you can see that the black, let's call it the primary version, works well on lighter colors, but when it gets to darker colors, you want to use the white version, because then it's going to show. And you can see here that I actually let the color of the background come through. So the same would go for photography. I don't have any photography examples in this one, but you can have another page where you use photographs, and you would have your logo sitting on photographs to show, which version would work best on photography. Then you've got clear space. So you want to make sure as well with your logo that it's not crowded. So if you have your logo on a page and it's surrounded by text or imagery, you don't want that text and imagery to be right up against the logo, because then the logo gets lost. You want to specify a minimum amount of space to be left around the logo. And the best way to do that I found, is to take something from the logo and use that for size and space. So that it means that if the logo's a specific size, then you take an element of the logo at the size the logo is, and you use that as your guide for the space that you should leave around here. So for example, in this one, I've taken the letter L from the logo. It's the only letter, it's the only L in the logo, so there can't be any confusion. And then the L is used to specify the space around there. Okay, and then we've got some incorrect usage here. So just basic stuff again, saying like you shouldn't distort the logo, don't squash it. It should always maintain its exact proportions. Don't change elements of it. So in this instance, I've just decreased the size of the text, but it could be that the crumb elements are made larger. Depending on your logo and what elements you have in your logo, you just don't want sizes changed or moved around. You want to make sure that the logo stays the same. Here I've got a contrast issue. So you can see here that the logo isn't, the contrast isn't high. So you want to make sure that in that instance you would use the white version, as is mentioned earlier on in the guide. And here, just saying don't choose any colors that are outside of the prescribed color palette of the logo. And that kind of takes us nicely onto the next slide, which is where I specify what the colors are for that logo. Now, I always specify Pantone colors. I specify hexadecimal. I also specify the RGB colors. It's just that some people work in RGB, and some applications, when you're putting color in for digital, it may ask for red, green, and blue, or it may ask for hexadecimal. So I like to give both options there. I don't just give one or the other. And then CMYK colors as well. And then I think the next page, is just showing some tints of each color. Because using tints and shades as well actually means that you've got your 6 colors here, but by using tints and shades, you're expanding on that as well, and you're getting a little bit more scope, but you're staying within the color palette. One of the other things which I include is typography. And the reason I include that is because obviously the logo has typography in it, and then more often than not, the client's going to want to know what typefaces, fonts they should be using that will work well with their logo. So I will specify a font pairing for them, and I'll do that, just a little bit of information for them to say this is the guidance. And you can see here that the type in the logo is grilled cheese, is the name of the font. And then for body copy and supporting text, I've gone for Montserrat, and I specified that bold should be used for hero and H1 titles, Montserrat semi-bold for secondary titles, H2, H3, H4 if you know your website H's, and regular for any body copy. And then I just have a couple of pages that just kind of, show the ABCs. I'm not entirely sure why, but normally I would have numbers here as well. I don't know why they're missing off of there. I'll need to check them out. And then just, showing again the rest of the Montserrat family here. And that's basically it. That's a really short, quick set of logo guidelines. They don't have to be too in-depth. It's just, I don't know how many pages are there, but, sort of 18, 19 pages. And they're just very clear bits of information. They don't have to go too in-depth. As I mentioned, you could have in here, you could have the logo sitting on photography if you want to include that. And I do include that for certain clients where I know that that's going to be used. In this instance for my sister, it's not here, but it is something that can be added at a later date. That's the cool thing about this, is they can be expanded upon. And then if my sister decided to do more sort of brand strategy work and work on archetypes and messaging, then those could be added, and we would then be into creating a set of brand guidelines. Just want to quickly check the chat, see if there's any questions. Okay. So Carrie's asking, what's the best font to use in logos? There isn't really a best font. You really want to be choosing the font that fits the brand, so, and that will only kind of come out by knowing who the brand is targeting, what sort of personality they want to have. Are they very corporate? Do they have a sense of humor? Do you want it to feel warm? Do you want it to feel technical? All of these things, you will choose a font for the logo based on those feelings that you want the brand to have. So there isn't really, I don't have a specific set of fonts which I go to all the time. I will look at fonts based on the character of the brand that I'm creating the identity for. So one other thing which I mentioned is I do create a much more simplified version of logo guidelines, and that's this here. So well, let's just check here. So Mobius has just asked a quick question. Well, I think I missed a bit about padding space, the L spacing outside the logo. Can you pad that out a bit? Can you pad that out a bit about situations for this? So let's see, which artboard is that? 15? Nope, 12? Let's see which artboard that was. So this one. So situations. Well, kind of sort of what I'd mentioned. So let's say, let's say you have like a page, right? So you have a page. Let's give it an outline. So you have a page, and then you have some text. Okay, so let's say you have text. Let's change that to be quite small. Let's do another one. Let's say you've just got a couple of paragraphs, of text, and then let's say your logo needs to go on this page with some text. There is a chance that this could happen. And you really, it's just really, this text is just getting really close to it. Now this could be photography as well. This could be imagery here. It's all just really too close. And so as as I said, we want the L to guide the amount of space. So for that size of logo, this is the L here. And so for me, I'd want this text at the bottom to be at least this amount of space away. And for this side text, we need to again put that near there. So this text needs to be at least this far away. And then you can see at the top here, it's too close to the edges of the page. So I then, well, I need to take this, move this over here. So if you want to put that over there, then that's then not leaving much space for this text at the side. So you'd probably want to decrease the size of the logo. So you would decrease the size of the logo, and you can see the L's are staying the same. I'm going to want to have the same space from the top of the page. I don't want my logo to be sitting too close to the top. So again, I need another L here. And I'm just going to copy that and just sit that one at the bottom because we'll need that again. And so I'm going to take that logo and I'm going to sit it and put it where I want that to be. Then I can make this text column go back here. You can see here that the column width isn't too close to the logo. And then this column here can go up to there. And then I'll just take these away. And then it just means that my logo now has space around it and isn't being swamped by too many blocks of text. This is a really, really simplified example. But it's about just giving the logo room to breathe. Hopefully that answered your question, Mobius. Yeah, okay, cool. Hey Hassan, I'm good. Hope you are too. Dean's asking, do you make all these variations? So when you say variations, okay, you just answered. Sorry, I meant to say, do you do all the variations in the final file given to the client, or you only stated in the guide? So in the guide, so for example, in this one, and this is actually, I don't normally do this many variations, but it was for my sister. So my sister was given this primary logo here, this one up here, this inverted version, these two versions here, and these here were all supplied in different file formats for different uses. Most clients really only have sort of one main primary logo and then probably an inverted version. And the software I use for that can do a lot of work for you with logos, and it's Logo Package Express. I've got a video about it on my channel, and it's an extension for Illustrator. And basically what I do is I can select my logo. So if I select this one, for example, now this is different because this is going to be black and white, so it's not really going to, well, I can try this one, I suppose, here. And what I can do is I can set the logo here, so you can see here that it's setting this as the master artwork. And then what I can do is if there was a tagline, or let's say there was a symbol and a tagline and a logo type, then I can set each of those. In this instance, it's all just one logo, so I'm just going to keep that there. And then what I would do is I just click on, there's settings as well you can change in here, but let's just go back. I click Make Print Logos, and what Logo Package Express does is it goes through, you can see here, I choose to manually color my Pantone colors. It goes through and makes various versions of it, and you can see here it's not quite worked that well with this here. So there might need to go in and change. There are settings that you can change here for contrast, where it will pick up the different contrast between those, so that it would show the text. But you can see here it's created a grayscale version. It's created an inverted version. And you might have to play around with some of these, but it does save me a lot of time. And then if I have a Pantone version, I would go in and manually create choose my Pantone colors. If you have it automatically, what Logo Package Express will do is it will look at the colors you have and it will choose the closest Pantone color it can find from the Pantone books which are installed in Illustrator. But it does use it uses the default Pantone books, which are quite old now, so you won't actually get the full Pantone library of choice, but it can help you out. It can give you a starting point. And then what you do is once you've got these all kind of fixed the way you want them, you then choose to export print logos. And what it will do is, I don't know if you'll be able to see this, but it'll export Illustrator, PDF, EPS, JPEG, SVG, PNG files. You can choose the different scales, so it will do 200 pixels, 400 pixels, 600 pixels. I've set these myself. You can add as many as you want. And for print, you can set print scale, so 150 millimeters, 50. There's a lot of scope there, but that's what I do to export a lot of different file formats for my clients. But that's after the guidelines and everything are done. So yeah, really I am only exporting the variations which are in the guidelines, because that's the versions. If you're telling the client these are logo versions that you can use, then they should be in the guidelines to kind of give them an idea of how those logos, of the logos that they should be using. And no others. If they're using other versions, then they should really speak to you as the logo designer first. But like I said at the start of the call, clients can sometimes just go and do what they feel like they want to do, and you can't control that. That's up to them when they do that. So back to this. So this is essentially, this one page contains pretty much all of the information which is in this set here, but it's just much more condensed, and it means that the client can have just a very quick crib sheet, or a very quick one-page guide that they can look at, quickly see what their color codes are, quickly get an idea of the safe space. In here as well, I've got minimum sizing. I actually don't think I had that on the other one, but what's the smallest size that it should go, because with logos, if you go too small, you can lose detail. So you kind of want to specify what the minimum sizing is for that. So a lot of my clients find this one-page guide really, really useful, because it just means they can just print it out and pin it to their wall or something, and they've got a very handy at a glance one-page guide that they can quickly, and it's usually for things like hexadecimal colors and things like that they want to use, and then what are our brand fonts again, what should we be using, they can quickly see here, and then a quick look at what their stacked and inline logo looks like. This one sheet may change ever so slightly depending on the client, depending what their logo is, how many versions they have, but it's more or less based around these, and you can make this look whatever way you want it to look, but you're just getting across the basic information for them so that again they can just keep things on track, rather than taking a guess at what the yellow should be or what the blue should be. They can very quickly get the numbers that they need for it. Now, I did mention that there are brand guidelines as well, which are more expansive. And a quick example of that would be these here. So this is a set of what I would call a master brand guide for a client. And it goes way more in depth than just the logo. Now, I have redacted some information in this. I've covered it up with blocks of color because there's information and strategic stuff in here that my client uses to create their content. We worked on that together. So like story frameworks and core messaging, and I don't want their competitors to watch this video and get an insight into what the secret sauce is that my client's going to be using for their brand. But there are elements of it that we can look at. So, as I mentioned, the full brand guidelines contains things like the my client's purpose. What is it that they're trying to do? What is their purpose beyond making money? What do they believe? And this, by the way, this is for they're a pet food company based in Kuwait. Has things like their vision, what their mission is, their values that they want to live by. It has information about their ideal target customer. You can see here we've got photographs of what that customer would look like in their day-to-day life. We've got what's the personality of their target customer, or their customer avatar, or their customer profile, as you may have heard it. What are the archetypes of that customer? What are their challenges and pain points? What are their fears and desires? You're making this a real person, so that when they're creating content, then they're speaking to that personality. We've got some of their competitors. Why are they different to their competitors? We have the client's brand personality. You want to think about a brand as a human, not just this corporation or this business entity. You want the brand to be real. How would the brand talk to other people if it turned up at a networking event? What would it be wearing? How would it sound? Would it be softly spoken? Would it have a sense of humor? You need to get all of that in here, and you can see that I've kind of blocked a lot of that out. And then the same as the target customer, what's the brand's characteristics? What's the brand's fears and desires? What's its tone of voice? What are the dimensions of that? How will it express itself? Some key words around the brand. And I do, I think, a brand interview. So basically I ask the brand questions and it has to answer as if it was a person. It makes the brand more human. Then we've got the core message framework, who they serve, where they need help. Again, the key differences, the benefits that they get, the alternative. The vision and mission come back in here, the way they do business. Then we've got a brand story framework. And this is where you create the narrative for the brand and how the brand interacts with their customers. And how does the brand interact in terms of what's the features, what's the benefits that the customer will get, and the story framework should be around the customer and the brand kind of comes in and plays a part in the customer's life. You know, what's the difference that the brand can make? So you're basically telling a story of where the customer is before they've met the brand, what's their life like, what problems are they having. Then you tell the story of how they meet the brand, whether in the brand's product or service, and then you talk about what difference that's made to that customer's life. You know, what's the outcome? So you can see here I've covered all of this up because, you know, I can't show that to you. Then you've got things like taglines and hooks, you know, so their tagline is healthier, happier pets, and you expand on that for hooks and intros and sort of elevator pitches. Then we move into what you'll have just seen, which are the logo guidelines. So here you can see that the logo is in Arabic as well because they're based in Kuwait, but primarily they'll be using the English version of the logo, but we did need to have an Arabic version. And then you'll see some things which look familiar to you here. Legibility, taglines, spacing around the logo, incorrect usage, color codes, typography. And obviously with this one, we needed to have Arabic. And, you know, we had to, with the font use, we needed to choose some different fonts for English and the Arabic one just for legibility. On that. Then we've got, you know, what style of images do we want to use? You know, because they'll give off personality for the brand. Then we've got patterns. What patterns could be used for the brand? And we've made patterns from the logo symbol. How can the logo mark be used? And you can see here I've used it sort of in a pop art way. You know, it's just an example because these are guidelines. I don't want to tell my client, you can only do this. And that kind of comes into the mock-ups, which we're about to show. You want their guidelines. So they're a guide. You want the client to be able to expand on things, but you don't want them to go too far with it. You don't want them to lose the consistency of how the brand looks, but you want them to be able to play. So it's a fine balance of giving enough information that they can play with it, but without destroying all of the hard work that you've put in together in creating the brand in the first place. And so here we can see how the brand identity is being used, those patterns coming into play for sort of tape, packaging, bags, t-shirts. We've got, you know, pet collars, we've got billboards, we've got food packaging here. Merchandise, so they may want to do promotional merchandise, stationery, vehicle graphics, and then kind of the last page. So this is a much more expansive, so this is 54 pages. You can have brand guidelines which go into way more pages than that, go really, really in depth. And there are examples out there of brand guidelines that are many more pages than this. You also have brand guidelines which can be interactive, and they work on web pages. And I've actually got some examples. Let's see. I'm sure I brought some examples of that together here. Yeah, so let's take a look here. Let's see. Nick's saying, how late am I? Seems my schedule always likes catching you late. Glad to be here. Well, you've missed 40 minutes of it. I've actually just finished going through some examples of logo guidelines which I've made, so you're going to have to catch that up on the replay. But just about to look at some examples of, I suppose, bigger brands and their logo guidelines. So this is the logo guidelines for Netflix, and it's super simple. So just brand assets. They may have a more in-depth one, which, you know, is elsewhere online, or it may be only in-house. But when you go to the brand assets, they talk about the logo with the arc of a vintage cinemascope and the signature Netflix red. Our word mark is iconic. Then they show the colors. So they have their Netflix red. So there's the RGB, hexadecimal, CMYK, and Pantone, which is the same as as what I do for my clients. They've got clearing space, and you can see here, as I've done, they've taken the T out of Netflix and they use that for the safe space around their logo. Logo in color, so they talk about situations where you can use it. They've got a link here to a color contrasts website where you can check contrast, so you can upload your image and it'll tell you what the contrast is like. And then watermark, so they're saying that if there's a watermark, then you can use it in white in this occasion, and they give you some things to avoid, so incorrect usage. You can see here they've got quite a few, and they say, they give a description of why that's incorrect. And then they've got some kind of, I suppose, tongue-in-cheek considerations. So at the bottom here, they've got avoid doormats, rugs, or anywhere else people walk, protect our logo from getting dirty, and then a couple of other fun usages here. And then they've got a section for the symbol. So, that's quite iconic as well. And again, you just go through the same setup as they have for their logo. Then we've got Spotify, and they talk about things like attribution, how you should use their logo when, you're using it on things. They've got a little safe space bit here. Not entirely sure. So they've got a safe space specified as X. I'm not sure where, if it says where X is actually being taken from, but they have that space as X. Then, how to use the icon, what colors it should be used in. Again, we've got exclusion zones here for the logo, minimum sizing, logo misuse, logo colors, yes, no, and no. And then they've got naming restrictions, and then what fonts they use as well. So you can see that there's a lot of commonalities between guidelines and how some elements appear in all guidelines, some appear in one but not the other. It really just depends on the client, the situation. Some clients want the detail. They want precise. That's a mix of specific and precise. Precise might be a new word. They want specifics and precise details on how the logo should be used. And so those guidelines could be quite in-depth. Or you can have, like Netflix, it's fairly loose. We've got this one from Cisco, which is, interactive almost. And as you scroll, they've got these sort of videos playing, telling you a bit of a story about the logo. And as you go through, you learn about their vision. So this is leaning more into being a brand book than just logo guidelines, because it talks about their vision, their mission, what their brand's all about, how their logo is their flag and how it represents them. And you can see quite cleverly they're showing how the logo gets used on different photography. In the clear space, they're using the height here of the I think their symbol represents the Golden Gate Bridge in San Francisco. I think that's what that logo symbol means. And then they talk about color, and then their typefaces, and it looks like they've got a specific type which has been created just for them, Cisco Sans. And yeah, you can kind of keep scrolling and going through stuff on that, but it takes a little while to load sometimes. Just want to quickly give a shout out to Ian at Logo Geek. If you're a designer and you're not in the Logo Geek Facebook community, I highly recommend you join that, because there's a lot of really good conversations go on in there. People upload their logos to get feedback. People latest articles, some fun stuff. So it's if you just go to Facebook and check on Logo Geek, there are some questions that you need to answer before you get in. Ian does decline a lot of people because they don't answer the questions, you know, so try to answer those as fully as possible. And the fact that Ian does ask questions and declines a lot of people means that that Facebook group is well administered, and it's one of the best groups out there for, and it's not just about logos, it's graphic design as well. It's the logo design community. But the reason I mention that is that Ian has pulled together a brilliant Dropbox resource that's full of brand guidelines and logo guidelines, and they could be used as inspiration for your own guidelines and how you can set them up. And if you want to find that, I'm going to drop this link into the chat window for you guys. So there's the link there, and that will take you to Dropbox, and you can download those brand guidelines and look through them at your leisure. So massive thanks to Ian for pulling that together, and as I say, check out his logo geek community. As you can see here, he's got over 10,000 members, which is an amazing achievement, especially as the community is still a very positive and upbeat place to be. It is, like I say, it's adminned really, really well. I'm in there quite a lot, giving feedback and asking questions myself and posting content in there. So, you know, feel free to join that in there. So let's see. Dean saying, can we have another video by creating a non-existing brand with in-depth ideas how to create those characteristics you have in the brand guidelines? Or is there any book you can recommend? Yeah, so, you know, I've been asked quite a lot to kind of do something like that, do a live stream where we create a logo from scratch. It is something that can be done, but because of the fact that I do so much strategy work with my logo designs, and I take quite a long time to do that, to strategize and do the work. Yes, we could create a logo on screen, you know, in a stream, but it wouldn't really be following the processes that I follow. So I don't really know what we'd get out of that other than looking at, you know, using Illustrator to pull a logo together. I know that other designers have done that, and, you know, so there's plenty of videos on YouTube doing that. In terms of books, sort of the best books in terms of the process that you should be following are probably, let's see, bring up my kit page. Kit, cool. Oops. Would be Designing Brand Identity by Alina Wheeler. But if you go to this link here, I'm going to paste another link into the chat. If you go to this link here, you'll see here I've got books on brand strategy, identity, and branding. Designing Brand Identity. Oh, I'm not showing my web page here. So this is my kit page. Let's go. I'll go back one bit. So if you land on my kit page, you want to go to this section here, and I've got books in here that I use all the time. Logo Design Love's a good one. Designing Brand Identity is a good one. And Branding in 5.5 Steps. These are 3 very good books if you want to learn about the process. They won't tell you how to design a logo and how to create all the different options and stuff. That's really, you might probably want to check out Skillshare and things like that to look at courses on, you know, how to design a logo. It is something that I might do, but I've got so much other stuff that I need to do that it would take quite a bit of time. But it is on my list of stuff to do, Dean. So, you know, don't be disheartened by that. There are other designers who have got that online already. It is something I might do, but I've got so many other things that I need to be doing myself that it is quite a big time commitment. But I'm never say never. I might do it. We'll just have to wait and see. Right, before time kind of runs away with us, because we're now coming up for the first hour, I did say that I was going to discuss how I choose color for logos and the way that I do it. And as I say, it may not be the way that everyone does it. So let's say I've designed a logo. So I'm not going to go into how I choose the colors for the logo. That's different. What I'm going to do is how I get the numbers that I need. So let's go to, which one is it? Nope. These numbers. How do I get these numbers here? You know, what's my process to get these? So let's just copy these and let's just move them into this page here. So let's say I've designed a logo and these are the three colors that I've gone for. Let's see if we can bring in the color numbers here. Again, unless you're viewing this on a big screen, you might not be able to see these numbers here in my color palette. But I've got one of the first things that I make sure that I'm doing is that I'm working in a CMYK document. I always start choosing colors in CMYK. And the reason being is that if you start choosing colors in RGB, the color, what's known as the color gamut, is much wider than CMYK. So you can get much brighter colors in the RGB color gamut. And if you start in RGB, you might choose some really vibrant colors, but you're going to run into problems when you then want to move into CMYK, because CMYK cannot replicate that breadth of color that RGB can. And if you have, for example, a really vibrant lime green, and then you then just transfer that and change that to CMYK, it will go quite dull and you'll lose the vibrancy. And so what I do is, unless the client is only ever going to be using their logo online, on screen, and they're like, I'm never going to print my logo, which I find very, very hard to believe, then yes, you can work in RGB. And one thing to mention is that Pantone spot colors, so the Pantone matching system, you'll sometimes see it as Pantone PMS. The PMS stands for Pantone matching system. Pantone spot colors can replicate a lot of RGB. You get vibrancy with Pantone spot colors, but it is a different printing system. CMYK color printing is much cheaper than getting into using Pantone spot colors. But if you must have a really vibrant color, then Pantone spot colors will help you out when it comes to printing. So as I say, I start with CMYK. I always start with CMYK, because that means that if I move from CMYK to RGB, I know that RGB can handle the color gamut of CMYK, so I'm going to get a closer match than I would if I was going the other way. Just want to quickly check chat here. Mohit, is there any way I can do an internship with Rock Your Brand, a remote one? I wanted to learn the craft to the fullest. Please give me an opportunity. Yeah, I'm not really doing any internships. I am looking at doing potentially doing some mentorship groups, but I'm working on those ideas with my business coach, and that's still in early days yet. It is something that may come, but internships can, I basically work on my own, and so I have a lot of client work that I need to be doing, and so to dedicate time to internships is not something I can really do. If you are looking for internships, you're best to kind of contact design agencies where they have a lot of staff. That way they can actually allocate time to internships. I know that when I worked in some design agencies, we had interns come in, and it was much easier to help the intern learn because there was more people that could help out When it's sort of a one-person business, it's more difficult. So unfortunately, at this time, no, I'm not offering any internships. I'm trying to spread my knowledge through things like these live streams as much as I can to help you as much as I can. But yeah, I'm not really doing any internships, so I'm sorry I can't help you out with that at this moment. So back to color. So how do I start? With let's say I know that the colors I want to choose for my logo are, orange, blue, and purple are the colors that I'm choosing because of the color psychology that they have, and they represent the brand that I want to use. So let's see if we can get this overhead camera thing to work. So one of the first things that I start with is my little swatchos box. And what I'll do is I'll get my swatchos and I'll work on a much bigger table space than what I'm using here. See here, I've been working on a logo actually, which was using blue and green, because you can see here I've been looking at all the different blues and greens and which ones work best together. But normally I would have all of my swatchos, okay, so which cover all the color bases. So with this one here, what I'd be doing is I'd be going through my swatchos and I'd be going to all the orange ones and pulling out just all the different types of orange. Even, that one's more of a brown color. So I pull these down a bit so you can see these. But there's a lot of different versions of orange. So I'd be doing that. Again, there's lots and lots of them, okay? So let's just focus on orange for now. I would do the same with blue and I would do the same with purple. The good thing about swatches as well is what I can do is I can bring down all of the blue ones, and I would bring down all of the, let's see if I can find these. It's hard to see because I've got a big iPhone in front of my face, so it's hard to kind of see where all my colors are. So where's all my purples gone? Where have I hidden them? Here, over here. So I can then kind of bring down like all the different purples as well, purples and violets. And then I can start to move things around. And then I start to go, okay, well that orange might work really well with this blue here. So what would be the best kind of, purple to bring in here? Maybe not that one. Maybe it's this one. Okay, maybe I think I need a more vibrant orange to work with this. So take this one out. And that's the great thing about swatchos, is that it lets me just very quickly throw stuff around a table and pick out color schemes. And you can see here on these cards, let me just hold this up to the camera a little bit, hopefully it'll focus. We've got the CMYK reference. So this one that I've pulled out here is 100% cyan. So you've got 100, which is the cyan number, and then you've got 000, so that's the magenta, yellow, and black. Then we've got the hexadecimal code for this blue, and on the back, we've got some tints and shades as well. So, if I want to go slightly darker, I can instantly see that this has got 25% black added into it, and trying to look through here, I'm looking at my cameras, and then it gives me the different hexadecimal numbers for that. So this gives me a starting point. I'm not saying that these are the exact colors that I would use, but it lets me create color palettes really, really quickly. So once I have a really quick color palette, I would then move into Illustrator. So go back to desktop. So here's this orange here. So the orange which I had from swatchos, if we go to here, the color makeup is 75 magenta and 100 yellow, and that's what makes that up here. Now, if I'm thinking, well, I want that a little bit darker, then all I do is I just basically, I kind of add in some black to it just to bring it down a bit, or I would add in some, if I want to add in more magenta, I can put that up to 80, and I'll basically get that to the way that I want. Now, what I will say here as well is that I use quite high-end monitors, which are specifically designed for designers with a high color accuracy. And I also use a color calibrator to calibrate my monitor. So I know that my monitors are pretty accurate when it comes to color. If you just have a cheap monitor, then the chances are it's not going to be very, very accurate. So that's where things like the swatchos will come in handy for you, because these are printed and these are in front of you. So for example, you could have this one here, and you can see with your eyes the color of this orange. You can then go into Illustrator, put these numbers in to Illustrator. So let's go, let me just do a quick undo. And you can then look at the color of the orange on your monitor and look at the color of the orange in your hand and see how close they are. And obviously the one that you want to rely on is the one which is in your hand, because that's what it's going to look like when it's printed. If the color on your monitor is way off from this, then that kind of causes issues for you, because you're not really working accurately in your own kind of studio space or working space. Now, this is a great example as well of, you can specify this orange and it could look, so for me, the orange on my monitor that I'm looking at now looks exactly like this orange here. It's a really, really good match. I'm holding the card up next to the orange on my screen and it's pretty much an exact match. You could send a PDF of this orange to your client, and your client could have their color on their monitor completely off. The brightness is really bright and the contrast is really low, and they're not going to be looking at the same orange as you. And what I did mention in a past live stream was that what you can do is, if you're about to start working with a client on their logo, you can actually, I would highly recommend you buy a box of these for yourself. But what you can do is you can actually buy a box of these for your client and send them to your client. Now, a box of swatchos, I think, is about £35, which is about $50. Okay, now, if you're only charging $50 to create the logo, then buying a box of these for your client means you're not going to make any money. So the first thing I want to say there is you need to charge more for your logo design. Okay, you need to be able to pay for these sorts of tools. And if you buy a box of these and send it to your client, that's a value added service, and your client's going to really appreciate that. And what that then means is, no matter what the client, the color the client's looking at on screen, you can tell them, go to your swatchos box and pull out card number 60, and that's the orange that we're going to be using for your logo. Then they can see more accurately what it is that you're doing. Okay, so that's just something that I would do. I understand that some of you won't be charging much for logo design, and part of that may be where you are based in the world, and the cost of living and stuff. And I get it, I totally get it. But logo design is a skill, and if you're good at logo design and you're taking the time to craft a logo, you should be being paid for that. So you should be charging enough to make a living, but also to be able to afford to purchase the right tools. So I'm talking about how I use color calibrated monitors. They are not cheap. They're not cheap at all. You're looking sort of, well, let's talk dollars, because most people can kind of understand what dollars are, but you're looking at sort of $750 upwards. The top high end ones, I mean, my one is about $800, but the really top high end ones are $3,000. Huge amounts of money. But if you're working in an industry where color accuracy is important, then you should have the right tools. If you want to be good at logo design, you should be doing color accurate work. And so having tools like swatchos, Pantone books, color calibrators, these are things that you should be working your way towards so that you can provide your client with the best color accurate numbers and specification that you can. Now, like I say, it can be costly, but these are tools for your business. You know, if you're doing it as a hobby, then you know it's really up to you. But if you're creating logos for business owners for them to be using to promote their brand, then you should be taking it seriously. And by taking it seriously, that means you should be charging what you're worth. You know, so and if it's a case of, oh, clients won't pay that, yes, they will. You're just working with the wrong clients. You know, if you can show that you can show your process, how you specify color and how you're really serious about color accuracy, then the right clients will gravitate towards that. You know, if you're working with cheap clients who only want to pay $50 for a logo, you need to get rid of those clients. That's my preaching for today. I don't want to go on and preach any more about that. Let's get into this. Let's get back to color. So we've got this orange. Okay, so let's say I stick with this orange. I now need to get these numbers here. Okay, so I need to get my Pantone numbers, my hexadecimal numbers, RGB numbers, and we've already got the CMYK numbers. So we've got the CMYK numbers from our swatchos card because we're going to stick with that orange. So the CMYK numbers we know are 0, 75, 100, and 0. Let me just double check that. Oh, I've lost the card that I was using. I think I've put it back in my swatchos deck, but I'm pretty sure that those were the numbers. Anyway, got a bit lost there. So that's our CMYK number. So let's actually put these to 0 because we don't know what these are yet. Okay, so 0, 0, 0. And we don't know what the Pantone number is. 0. So we've got Pantone 0. Right. So here's my process. So like I say, I start with CMYK. Now, next thing you can do is find your hexadecimal code. Now, I think this is where things diverge. Okay, so let's look at a Pantone book. So I use the Pantone color bridge guide. You get different Pantone guides. You get the spot color guide. Well, the two main ones would be the spot color guide and the color bridge guide. Now, the reason I like the color bridge guide is because it covers the best of both worlds. So down this side here, it has Pantone spot colors, and down this side, it has the CMYK equivalent. So if I was wanting to, so let's say we've got the swatchos one, we've got the swatchos numbers of 75 and 100. What I can do is I can go to the orange, sort of the pages in my book here, and look on the right-hand side at these numbers. And it won't give, it might not give 75 and 100, but it'll give numbers which are, maybe fairly close, or maybe I'm going through and I go, actually, you know what? I really like the brightness of Pantone 716, and the color numbers for that are 59 and 100. So I like that. And then I can look across and go, well, there's the Pantone equivalent, the Pantone spot color equivalent of that. And these two are a pretty close match. Now, it might look different on your screen because my phone is not going to pick up color properly. I'm looking at these by eye, and they're fairly close match, but I'm looking at them on my monitor, and they're looking a little bit different. You can see if as I move down the page, this one 715 looks a little bit closer, but you can see that on some of them, so this one here 717, there is a big difference between the two. So what I don't want is I don't want my client to have 717, have the 69102 here, the CMYK numbers, and be printing that a lot of the time, and then there may be an occasion where they need to use a Pantone. It might be they may be getting some pens made or some screen printing done, and they have to give a Pantone color. This Pantone's going to come out darker, and so I don't want that. And so what I sometimes have to do is I go, well, this is the CMYK that I want, but using my book, which Pantone spot color do I actually think is closest? And actually I like 716 more than 717. And that's the benefit of having these books, is that you don't automatically want to go with the Pantone spot that sits opposite the process colors here, because they can sometimes be quite a way off. Let's see if I can find one which actually on camera is going to really show a big difference. It's not really working. My camera is not really playing ball with these, which is a shame, because really bright oranges, bright blues can look amazing in Pantone spot color, but then when you get to CMYK, they look terrible. Orange is a good example of that. Can't quite see it on this one here, but this here in person is really bright. It's like almost neon, and the CMYK version is very dull and much darker. And so this is like an example of where you would start with RGB. So RGB has the vibrancy of Pantone spot colors. So you specify all of your colors, you go, these are the logo colors, you show them to your client, the client's like, that's great, it's really bright, I love it. Then most of the time they're going to be printing in CMYK, they get their stationery printed or their business cards, and the colors aren't as vibrant. Then they're disappointed, and they're coming back to you saying, this isn't the colors that you showed me, and then it just becomes awkward, and the client's not happy, and the only way then, if the client wants those colors to be vibrant on their business card, they're going to have to use Pantone spot colors. And using, if you have to use Pantone spot colors all the time, then that's an expensive process. And that's why I always recommend you start with CMYK, and then if there is a need for Pantone spot, which is rare, it's not used all the time, then you can choose a Pantone spot which matches the CMYK rather than going RGB to CMYK or Pantone to CMYK. You want to go CMYK to Pantone, CMYK to RGB, CMYK to hexadecimal. That then gives you that control over how your CMYK color works. Right, so but what if you don't have Pantone books? Right, well, if you don't have Pantone books, you can still specify Pantone spot colors, and you can get Illustrator to do that for you. But as I've just shown you there in my Pantone books, it may look okay on screen, but your screen often won't tell you the truth if it's not color calibrated. And so you may think, oh yeah, that's a perfect match, but then it actually isn't. But if you really have to, then this is the way that you can do it. So if you're in Illustrator, now I'm only showing you how to do this in Illustrator. I'm not sure about things like CorelDRAW and Affinity Designer. I'm not sure if this process works. You have the color that you want the Pantone for. You would then go to Edit Colors, and then you want to choose Recolor Artwork. Okay, and that will bring up this window. I then click on Advanced Options, which brings up this window. And down here, there's a little kind of gridded box, and it says None above it. If you click on that, that opens up a drop down of all the different color kind of palettes and books that are in Illustrator. Now, if you just have Illustrator installed and you've not added any books, then inside color books, what you will have is Pantone solid coated. You may have color bridge coated as well, and that's the books that I'm using. But I mentioned at the start of this, near the start of the stream, that those books, Pantone plus color bridge coated, that you can see highlighted here, they're about 8 or 9 years old now. And this book, which is from 2020, has about an extra, I can't remember, but it's something like an extra 600 new Pantone colors. So there's, you know, there's much more choice here. And you can see, I don't know if you can see, but I've actually got Pantone Color Bridge Coated version 4, and that's actually this book. And I've been able to add that using Pantone Color Manager, where I can start that up and it lets me export color books into Illustrator. Now, Pantone are actually discontinuing Pantone Color Manager, which frustrates me greatly, and they're moving over to Pantone Connect. Now, I've not really used Pantone Connect much, so I am going to learn how to use that, and I'm going to do a video on that, because, you know, as Pantone Color Manager gets phased out, then that's going to be the only way that you can actually bring Pantone colors into Illustrator. But for now, this is the way that I do it. So if you don't have the latest books, you would just basically use the one which is here. And as I say, I use Pantone Color Bridge because I have the books and I can check it. So I'm going to choose Pantone Color Bridge. I'm going to choose the old one because that may well be the one that you use. So I select that. And you can see now down here, it did say None, but it now says Pantone plus Color Bridge Uncoated. And then all I do is I click OK. And what's happened is that's now changed my CMYK into Pantone 485. It's quite small on screen, unfortunately. But what I should have said was, what you probably want to do is you want to, before you change it, just make a copy. Make a copy of the orange, okay? Then follow that process. Edit colors, recolor artwork, advanced options, choose your color book, and let's go Pantone Color Bridge Coated, and click OK. Okay, so I think I chose uncoated last time, but I always go with coated. Coated just is more vibrant. So here, it's given me 7579 CP. Now, what you can do is you can actually take this one and you can overlay it onto the orange of your CMYK. I'm going to take this white outline off of this one. And it actually looks pretty close. You can't really see, you can see a slight difference depending on your monitor, but that's a pretty close match. So what I would do is I would go, okay, well, I'm going to go to my books and I'm going to find Pantone 7579? Where is it? 7579. So if I go to the back of my book and go to the index and look for 7579. 7579. 75. So 7579 is on page 33. So we'll go page 33. Here's page 33. And I'm looking at 7579 here. So that's 7579. And you can see here that it's telling me that the CMYK equivalent for that is 75 magenta and 93 yellow. Now we started with 75 magenta, 100 yellow. And so what it's doing is it's picking the Pantone, which is the closest that it can get. And then it's telling me, well, if you want the CMYK to match that, then you should be changing the number from 75 and 100 to 75 and 93. So let's do that. So I've now changed that to 75 and 93. And now I can barely see the on screen here. I've changed these numbers up here to 75 and 93. And it has made a slight change to this orange. But it gets really complicated because you're jumping back and forth between the two. But I think you can hopefully see here on screen that there is a slight difference between these two. They're not a perfect match, but they are fairly close. And so I'm happy to kind of stick with those colors. And then what you'll notice as well over here on the Pantone side is that it gives you RGB numbers and it gives you the hexadecimal. HTML is basically hexadecimal. It gives you the hexadecimal codes. But I've actually found that it gets confusing here because if I select the Pantone one here, so this is the Pantone, and if I go to RGB, it's giving me RGB numbers of 215, 104, and 42. But if we look at the book, it's giving me 218, 106, and 51. So even the numbers there don't really match. And this is where it all gets really confusing because Adobe doesn't speak very well with Pantone, and there's, depending on your color profiles, it can all get, you can have different numbers depending on what you do and where you look. And so generally what I will do when I'm looking to choose my numbers, I'm going to put the Pantone book down now, is rather get confused with like all the book numbers and stuff, I have my Pantone, which I've chosen. I've got my CMYK up here, and to get my RGB numbers and hexadecimal numbers, I don't use the Pantone books. What I do is I just basically flick the burger menu here in my color palette and I go to RGB. And whatever the numbers are in here, these are the numbers I will use. So I'll go 215. You need to keep clicking back on the color if you can't remember. So it's 215, 104, 42. 104 and 42. And then we've got the hexadecimal, which is D7682A. And I will copy that. And then that will be my hexadecimal. And we know that the Pantone, I think it was 7579. Okay, so that, I don't need that. I'll just take that away because I'm just, basically I show the Pantone color, the CMYK color most of the time. And then I basically follow that process for each of these as well. Just want to, just out of interest, see how close it looks Pantone wise for. Now, if you want to do more than one color at once, you could basically just select two colors here, and then you just follow the same process: edit, recolor artwork, advanced options, choose your color books. Now you could choose Pantone solid coated or Pantone bridge coated, and I think you might end up getting different results again. But all I would say is be consistent with it. If you're going to use color bridge coated, always use that. Don't flick between solid coated and, for different, colors in the same guide. Always use the same one, then you have consistency. So just choose that, and then if I click OK, it gives me the Pantones for each of these. So it's telling me the blue 660 and the purple 526. And if I bring these up and overlay them. Again, it's got white outlines on here. And we zoom in. They're pretty close matches here. You know, so what I would do is, as you've seen, I would then go to my Pantone Color Bridge guide, have a look, see how close that actually is in my book. And if I need to kind of just choose a Pantone which is above or below, like for the spot color, I'll do that if I feel that it matches the CMYK a little bit better. But otherwise, this is, you know, these are fairly accurate on screen. But again, I have a color calibrated monitor, so I know that they're fairly accurate. I'll put those numbers in, and then I'll just basically work my way through. So that's how I choose my color numbers for my logo guides. As I say, people do it differently. Some people will use the numbers exactly as they are in here. All I would say is just be consistent with that. Stick with those numbers. You know, if you're always going to use the, you know, the RGB and the hexadecimal or HTML from the books, always use that from the books. Don't be mixing and matching between choosing them from Illustrator and choosing them from here. And I think that's really all you can do. Now, somebody may come along and say that that's the wrong way of doing it or whatever, but I've been doing that and I've not really had any issues. The colors which I'm specifying are the colors which are coming through on screen and being, you know, output. Now, obviously, you know, I'm looking at a CMYK document right now. If I drag my CMYK colors into an RGB document, they will still look the same. If I dragged RGB bright colors into CMYK document, there's potential that they're going to change because the color gamut isn't as wide. It's a big topic. I don't know if anybody's like puzzled by it. Like I say, you could probably do a couple of days, you know, as a class, looking at color and how to specify color. But obviously we don't have that sort of time today. But hopefully that was a good insight into, you know, at the very least, how you can use Illustrator to, you know, change a CMYK into a Pantone. And the same goes for, you know, if you have an RGB, you just follow the same process: edit, recolor artwork. Samatya is saying more about the calibration of the screen. Yeah, sure. So what I use is, so the software that I use is called, let me see if I can bring up my desktop. I'll fire it up because I can never remember what it's called. Yeah, so this is it here. It's called Display Cal. Oops, let me bring that to the front here. Let it just boot up. It takes a little while to boot up. So this is called Display Cal, and what it does is it will, so you can see here, lets you choose a display. So it's picking up a lot of displays because I've got my iPhone connected and stuff, but my main displays are my primary, and then I've got two Dell monitors either side. The two side monitors, my two side Dells, they're not color accurate. It's just my main monitor. I just use these side ones for other windows. But what I would do is I choose that, and then I use, let me just grab this. I use this here, which is an X1, an X-Rite i1 Display Pro. Okay, so this is a piece of hardware that I sit, or it hangs on my screen. I'll take this. This flips over, and there's a sensor here. You can see that sensor. That sits on my screen, and what Display Cal does is it basically runs through a series of color swatches, and the sensor looks at the color which is coming in through the monitor, and it uses algorithms and stuff and adjusts the monitor's profile to be color accurate. And then what I can do is I install that profile for my monitor, and it just means that I'm then looking at balanced colors. Even on a poor, on a fairly poor monitor, color calibrating it can help. So I'll just type in the chat exactly what this one is. It's an X-Rite I1. Now there are many different color calibrators out there. There's like this, is it Spider Monkey, stuff like that. But this is the one that I use, and I have good results with it. So what you would do is you would kind of, you can see here, this is where I would hang, this is on my screen, and I just hang it in front, and I'm just going to click start measurement, and it'll say that there's an error because I've not got it plugged in. But it's trying to set up the instrument, but because it's not plugged in, so it's not going to do it. But it would then just show a couple of swatches, black, white, and a few grey colours. I then use the controls on my monitor to get RGB in between these two arrows and get my white balance, it's brought up an error, in between those two arrows. Then I start the colour calibration, and it then installs the display. So there's lots of different things in here, but really the color calibration is the thing to go for, and it really makes a difference. You can check before and after, and you can see how it works. Even a color calibrated monitor, over time the colors drift, and so you need to calibrate. I calibrate my monitors every 4 weeks just to make sure that they're always in the right place. So hopefully that's a little bit of information for you on the color calibration. I'm not entirely sure how much the equipment is anymore. I've had my i1 Display Pro for quite a few years now. I don't know what the prices are on those things, but yeah, it's all the gear costs money. But like I say, if you want to be serious about color, then you should be using equipment that gives you that. Gives you that confidence that when you're giving guidelines to your client, that you have, the colors that you are seeing and working with are going to be, reproduced in the right way further down the line, when people use the color numbers from the guidelines that you're giving your client. So I think, has anyone got any questions about logo guidelines before we do some quick logo reviews? Shall we jump into the logo reviews? Right. Okay. Let's just jump into the logo reviews then. So as ever, I've got some people submitting logos for review, and this one is today's first one. Let's just close these windows here. These out of the way. So this one is from Nicole. It's for Clear Victory Coaching, industry sector, social media technology, entertainment, news and publishing. Target audience, corporate clients that need help communicating the needs and standards from leadership to employees to get production. The brand personality, I'm a woman working with men to soften and edit their communication style to get people to produce. Brand energy is healing, intelligent, organized, able to identify emotional needs and awareness. The brand qualities are a great listener, emotional, intelligent, gentle with boundaries, and some other information. I teach people how to give and receive feedback. I teach people how to build trust. I teach people how to have difficult conversations so that all parties are heard, understood, and can move forward in a positive manner. First thing I will say, that's a great thing, because I think many people need that type of coaching, especially to be able to receive feedback in the right manner, as well as to teach people how to give feedback in the right manner, because I think a lot of cross communication happens and people can fall out with one another or whatever. So first off, it's a great place to be in. So let's have a quick chat about the logo. So anyone in the chat, if you've got any feedback or thoughts on Nicole's logo, please drop them in there. You know, everyone's viewpoint is welcome. So when I opened this, my first impressions were, it feels open. You know, there's a lot of kind of space to it. And I always kind of look at the logo first before I look at the information, because I want to get, well, what's my first impressions of this? And so my first impressions were, it feels quite open. There's an airiness around it. I wasn't sure about the type. I felt that the type, there was something that didn't quite match up with the actual kind of, let's call it the symbol, these the circles, the ripples in the background. It just felt quite harsh compared to that. And then I can see that, you know, you have this drop shadow on here, and I think that's just adding a bit of noise. I don't think it adds anything to your logo. I would probably drop that. And then coaching is in leading case, so it's all uppercase with a leading uppercase C, and I'm not quite sure that blends too well with that. But what I will kind of say is that, you know, the fact that your target audience is men, okay, so you kind of you're probably looking for a certain amount of masculinity, but you're softening it with these outer circles, and I think from that approach it actually works really well. I think you're kind of getting that balance of masculine with a sort of like like a feminine touch to it, that softens that sharpness down. I would like to kind of maybe see a few different typefaces in that, and what you sent this as a PDF, and I was able to kind of, I just sort of created an actual version of it that we could kind of play around with and sort of work with on the call. I've got that locked actually, so let me unlock this, and let me just scale these so that they're both the same size. Chat seems very quiet. Nobody's got any feedback or opinions on this logo, which is unusual. Usually we get some feedback, so I'll just keep giving my feedback. So yeah, so let's say the first thing I would probably do is I don't know if it was just to maybe try to separate, if you're trying to separate the text from, you know, from the background shapes in some way, but I think, you know, I think it's better without the drop shadow. It looks slightly off center here because you've got all of the Y coming out of the circles, and then the C is going in. So just for an optical balance, I would probably bring, you know, if I wasn't going to change anything, I would just bring the wording across so that the C is just outside and then the Y is just outside, just to kind of center that. It may be that you were putting the V bang in the center of this circle, and that's why that's there. I'm not entirely sure. Let's just kind of draw some lines here, just to see where, you know, where we think that circle is. Let's make that black. Probably comes. Oops, I'm going to lock this again because that's going to get annoying. Not entirely sure where the center is of this, but it's probably fairly close. But the way I've done it now, the V's further over, but I think it kind of matches a little bit. And then as for the coaching, I'm just thinking that it's maybe a little bit too heavy with it. Oops. Let's try and group that. Let's see. Got Moby's saying, I like the circles, but as I've thought about it a lot in the last month, the gradient's not great for print. Yeah, we'll get onto that in a second. And I agree about the font choice, lack of a human feel, and black hurts the brand, I think. I think the circle logo is great though. And then a husband is saying, I'm curious what if the font was like a dark blue. So that's the first thing. That's one of the things that we can look at is color choice. So I agree that the black is maybe just a touch too harsh for it. And then obviously as well, we've taken this drop shadow away, so there's now there's a little bit more spacing, a little bit more tracking in the text. So you could probably that could maybe be like brought down quite a bit. Bring it in closer. And I noticed as well that there is no real kind of space. Clear victory is almost one word, which I don't mind. It may be that the kerning on that maybe needs to be just a little bit bigger the way you have it there, just to give it that little bit of space. But I think the tracking can be brought in. It was mentioned that maybe the color could be, maybe a darker, like a darker blue. A blue would obviously complement the sort of the yellowy gold that you have in here. And if you wanted to go with stereotypical colors, blue for a boy, pink for a girl, which I'm not a big massive believer in, but the blue would be more sort of masculine. I'm not saying that this blue is the right blue, but it's about trying to bring something in. The gold, I think, works in terms of an archetype of sort of the ruler, like a ruler archetype, a commander, which again would probably speak to the type of people that you're trying to work with. The gradients can get a bit lost. My concern would be, if this logo was really small, you kind of lose some of that. That is one of the problems when you start to work with logos where the lines are quite thin. I think you've made this gradient up, by the way. I think this is actually a clipping mask with potentially a block gradient in the background, maybe. I could be wrong. Let me just check. Release clipping mask. There's a lot of clipping masks going on. That could well be the PDF doing that. So let's just grab these. Let's get rid of that. Let's get rid of these clipping masks. Bring these back in. So this is gone darker now than it was than in year one, which doesn't help things. So I think if you're going to have these, then yeah, they probably do need to be sort of more in the background, but I'm not sure about the gradient color. I would maybe look to choose maybe a gold color of some sort and just have it as one sort of solid, but then it starts to interact with these, and so that's why you've probably got the gradient in there as well, because it helps the text to stand out. So you'd probably need to reduce the opacity and stuff, but again, that's probably because I've not got the right blue. I'm not here to kind of so a darker blue again would help you with the clearing that out. But I would like to see something, as has already been mentioned by Mobius, is that looking at a font which is maybe still a sans serif, but maybe has a little bit more character to it. I think this is Montserrat. So something which just maybe plays a little bit more with the thick and thins in there. Some, a more sort of humanist font, kind of going in, and something which just has, just does a little bit more play between the properties on there. I think, and then with coaching, I don't know, I'd be tempted to just match up the font, see how that goes. Whether you want that to be in all caps or not is another matter. At the moment, I think it's Allegria Sans that it's in. But if we were just for let's just type in coaching again. So that's actually coaching, but in Montserrat, which is kind of going to match up with with what you have. I am looking at color. I'm looking at the chat here. Greg starts saying, I like the tight kerning. Just needs some exploration with color. Also experiment with the gold color. It can be more pronounced. Yeah, so I've kind of gone for a more sort of flatter gold, I suppose. But I think if you're going to kind of, what I liked about the logo, I said at the start, is it feels open, and I like how that ties into the fact that you're talking about communication and open communication and better communication. And I feel that the word coaching here is heavy and dense, and I would like that to be more open, like the logo. So, having something which is lighter helps blend in with your circle motif here as well. I don't know if that's probably going to be too small being in there. I do sort of like how it comes out a bit. I'm not sure whether maybe even just going that little bit more bold just helps legibility a little bit. Oops, didn't mean to do that. This is not this is a grey blue that I've gone for, but I'm just sort of using more muted sort of colours here. But you want to kind of play around, as has been suggested, a little bit. What you have here is a really good start. I think the feeling matches what you're telling me. And I think there are just, some little nudges and stuff to it. The gradient could give you issues. I can see how it does bring something to it. But maybe try, rather than using a gradient, these have all been combined. These are all kind of combined together. But maybe you could have, I don't want to spend too long on this because I want to do the other one, but maybe you could have different circles, and the circles can be slightly different. Tints or shades of one another, so just kind of move them around so that you've got this kind of overlapping. Oh, it would help if I actually chose something. It's quite difficult to kind of get the randomness. You don't know where it needs to go. These are probably a little bit too thick anyway, so if it'll just drop down to 3. And I've probably got too many now, but let's take one of them away. But you could just kind of go in and play around with, making some of them lighter, and I think that might help you get across that gradient sort of open feel, but without having to use a gradient in it, and it will kind of let you. I've done a terrible job here moving these things around. But work on your colors. Have a look at some different type. Montserrat isn't terrible, and I actually think I prefer it being the Clear Victory being a little bit more bold. I think the text needs some weight to kind of and then it balances up with the vibrance, the openness that you have in the background shapes. I'm just going to bring the opacity of that down a little bit. But you've definitely got something there. And, you know, I think it's good. It's good. There's not much more to say. We could kind of, you know, this happens every week. We can just kind of being too picky with it. But I like the initial feel that you have. I just think tightening up, definitely drop the drop shadow. You don't need it. If you can get the balance right between the text and the coaching, and then what then that leaves you with is that you can then, you know, you could then start to think about, well, how will I use this in situations where space is small? You know, can you shorten, you know, would you shorten it down to CVC, for example, you know, and have, you know, CVC in here for use in sort of social media. This is going to make this bigger again. But you have to have a think about that, or it might be so that the circles stand out more. You might have fewer of them, but they're a bit thicker. So it's, you know, so that when it's small, you know, you're still getting some of that. What am I trying to do here? Arrange, bring to front, and then you'd want to kind of move these about so you're getting a little bit more of a kind of a change. I mean, obviously you're not going to view it at that size. It is going to be smaller, but just to kind of, you know, still give that circular feel. I don't know. It's worth exploring. And as Greg and that said, Greg and Mobius and that saying it's a really great start. And I know you're on the chat, but you're off to an amazing start. Thank you for submitting. Brave thing to do, but you are off to an amazing start here. A lot of the time, I think I find when I'm looking at logos, I don't see a connection between what's being said here on the left and what I'm seeing in the logo. And with yours, I'm seeing the connection of what you're trying to get to with this. And, you know, be proud of yourself for that, because it's not an easy task to get that feeling in there. So that's an amazing job. So well done. You know, keep me up to date with where you get to with this, because I think it's going to be great. And I think, like I say, I think the service is awesome and many people need it. So well done. A's saying, yeah, I was taught that a logo should fit on a bottle cap as easily as a billboard. Yeah, you know, these days you would say it needs to fit in a, you know, in a social media timeline, in a little tiny little circle or a little tiny square. But the bottle cap is, you know, for in terms of a printed thing, then yeah, you know, it needs to be able to print on that. And if it can't, that's when you then need to be looking at, like we talked about in the logo guidelines, what's the alternate, what's the secondary version. So when space is limited, you don't use the primary one, you use the secondary one for clarity of the brand asset. You know, you want people to really get that connection and recognize it as part of your brand. So good stuff. Good stuff. Right, so number 2 is this one from Shahrukh. Hopefully I've pronounced that correctly. And the brand name is Hello Loom. Digital marketing agency. Target audience, someone who is new in any business and wants to get highlighted in the market. Brand personality, friendly and elegant. brand quality is reliable and quick. And then some other information from Charuk. Simply hello. Simply hello is hello in Germany. Loom is world in Romanian and means hello world. So I'm interested to kind of know why German and Romanian. Is that where the client's based? Is that where you're based? Every entrepreneur has a rough time before starting a business, like a caterpillar. A butterfly hatching from the cocoon means a new entrepreneur introducing his or her business to the world. It's time for them to fly and explore the market they want to cater to. We as a creative agency, Hello Loom, trying to reach out to businesses like yours to help you reach your goal. We help them creating their unique brand identity so that they, and the reason there's ... is that's where that text ended in the email that I received. So I don't know if it was in the actual submission form, but that's where I got. So you left me on a cliff edge there. I wasn't sure what was going to come after that. But there's enough there to get a good idea of what you're trying to achieve with this. So let's get feedback from everybody in the room, and I'll give my feedback as well. So my first thought was, I really, really like the color palette. Right, I love that blue and yellow and white. I really, really like it. It's just it feels positive. It's kind of like a deep sort of sky blue, and then you've got the yellow, and it just, and I think overall, I think the balance is right. Just the size of that blue square balance kind of works, and hello world, and you've got your little tagline there. For anyone watching this on the stream, the colors may look slightly different. I think this yellow in the word loom may be slightly different to the one in the wings of the butterfly. I think it's slightly darker. It's a little bit more orange. I just want to check in here. This is an RGB document, so we'll just look at it in RGB. 241.193.22, and then let's click on this. Yeah, so it's brighter in the butterfly, and it's a more sort of orangey one, which I don't mind. I think it looks good. It looks good. So I like the idea. I like the story. I'm a big fan of stories behind logos. If there's a good story element that you can dig into that helps push the brand forward, all the better, because it really if you've got a really strong narrative behind a logo and an identity, it can really help you with your marketing and the other brand materials, and you can really pull from that story and create lots of nice stuff. So that idea of you helping the entrepreneurs as they come out of the cocoon to tell their story and launch their product is a really, really good one. And overall, a bit like I kind of said to Nicole, I do like this, but there's something about I think it's just the cocoon. There's something about the cocoon which has kind of thrown me off a little bit. And I think it's just because of the way it's been divided up with these lines. Now I know I'm trying to think of a cocoon, and I think you've got an image of one, so I'm just going to go over. So I just want to say that Charuk actually sent over a couple extra images, which kind of help explain, it basically explains what's in this text. So let's take a look at these. They're over here. So he's got the German hello and then Romanian for world. I am intrigued as to why German and Romanian. I would love to kind of know why that. Why that. It doesn't really matter. There's many brands out there that have names that are completely made up. Useless fact that some people may know, some people may not. The ice cream company Häagen-Dazs. So Häagen-Dazs doesn't mean anything. It's a made-up word. Apparently, the founders of the company wanted a name that sounded, I think, European or like Dutch or something, and they just made up the name Häagen-Dazs. It doesn't actually mean anything, but it sounds you know, it sounds like Swedish or something, but it's completely made up. But this isn't made up. This is, you know, from 2 different languages, but it's good. And then you've got the sort of the imagery that you've used as the reference for the logo, and you've got the kind of a butterfly and the cocoon that it comes out of, and then you've done the silhouette here. So it's a really, really helpful kind of way of storytelling. I mean, I got that from the logo, but this is if I was presenting this as a concept to a client, this is the type of imagery which really helps the client to understand the process and the thinking. So this is a really nice way of showing that. And so, I mean, I'm looking at I'm just going to take this over here, this sort of negative space version of it. Let's just kind of, oops, catching too much here. Let's just kind of shrink these down a little bit. Let's bring this one up a little bit. So yeah, there's something about the cocoon side of it. Now, I just want to quickly look at the chat here, to see what people are saying. Greg saying, when the small hello world can get lost, it's very thin. Yeah. RS is saying hello. Hello, RS. Thanks for joining. Movie saying this is also nice work. Many clean elements, but it's just slightly busy. Greg saying the division of the cocoon leaving the point at the top is a bit weird. I can kind of see the point's probably meant to be like, you know, this bit here, the bit that hangs. But yeah, I can see that. And then, you know, we've got this line going across here. It may be like to represent the cocoon splitting open as well. Mobius also, this is similar to our discussion from a few times back. Is the blue square, yeah, the negative space, always intended to be in the background of the logo? That's a good point. Because if that is the case, then I would say there's a lot of blue going on and the logo's, you know, fairly small in the middle. Unfortunately, these are JPEGs. I wasn't given an EPS version, so and this is all I have, so I'm not entirely sure. But what we could do is, if we were to kind of take this and be, you know, hopefully the tracing gods, the image tracing gods will be good to us here. It's taking quite a while because it's a fairly big image. But what we'll do is I'll trace this so that we can kind of take it out of the blue background. That looks like a fairly decent tracing job. Let's just... so it's given us 3 colors. I wonder if that'll give us... okay, we don't need that darker orange. We'll just run with this just now. Let me just see if I can... oh, this is going to take each time. So I think what I'll do is I'll just leave it after this one, and we'll just kind of work with this, because we're just wanting to look at how this looks not in the blue box. So I'm going to be happy with that. I'm going to expand this, and then we're going to ungroup it. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab that, make that a group, and then I'm going to grab this and make that a group. And then we'll leave the tagline for now. So let's just grab this. Let's get rid of that. Okay, so now obviously we have some bits in here that we need to get shot of. So if this was on a white background, would we presume that this would be blue? You know, or oops. See that now, for me that doesn't work, because the dark is the blue is really overpowering the yellow. It worked, the the balance here is pretty good. There just seems to be the right balance of blues and stuff here. For this, it's not quite working, and then because you would probably need to lighten the blue so that the balance was the same with the yellow, but you kind of, you know, lose that openness. There's something in this that makes it work better, but I'm still not sure about these dividing lines. I think they make it, if there's a good reason for it, then I would like to hear what the reason is, but I don't know if you know, if it was solid, I don't know if that would make, you know, would work. I'm just going to make this white again. You know, but if it is going to be in a square, I'm absolutely fine with it being in a square. But I'm wondering if the square needs, you know, the square's quite big at the minute. You know, you've got quite a lot of blue space around this here. I don't think you need as much blue space. And as I say, you know, would it work if the 'cause I do like how the yellow kind of almost looks like the body of the butterfly, but it's also like it's coming out of the cocoon. And maybe if the whole cocoon was white, maybe then there's too much white. It may well throw off the balance of it all. That's gonna have to kind of. This is me doing my terrible usual job. Yeah, that white is now way too heavy. So what would be a good way to do that? Would it be that maybe this needs to be sort of an outline as well? Let's see, nobody's saying anything. I don't know how thick that butterfly is, but let's just try that. Yeah, that's not going to work, is it? Or it might work if it was kind of played with properly. This isn't right. It's probably too. Oh, I can't find it's probably too angular. Maybe if we kind of sort of rounded off some of the, you know, maybe some of the corners were a bit more sort of rounded off, less sharp. I don't know. Maybe it looks a bit more like a chili pepper than a cocoon. But let's see. Y and X for the division of the cocoon. How about removing the division closest to the point and reshaping the point a little bit? Yeah, I mean, I think the point here. I mean, these have got, so the wings are quite pointed, but they've also got these really nice curves to them. And I think that really works. I really like that shape. I actually I really, really like the shape of this butterfly. And I'm just not sure, you know, the cocoon element, it's part of the story, you know, so you're coming out of the cocoon and you're helping them. If we kind of go for the whole, you know, what can you take away You know, what can we take away from the logo to simplify it right down? You know, can you simplify it right down to just sort of this really kind of abstracted butterfly shape? You know, and then so this could be the body, and it could also represent, like, you know, the cocoon, and the butterfly is the big bit, because that's the part which is taking off and, you know, doing something. But Samasi is saying maybe a pattern with more lines in the cocoon or dots. I would be careful about making the cocoon more complex, because the butterfly wings are so simple. Then, you know, if you add more complications into the cocoon could then probably take more visual interest. And I think the butterfly is the piece which works the most, and kind of comes forward. Moby saying it's interesting how the original logo has reflections of the H and L that shouldn't be lost too much, but I agree the butterfly shape is the magic. There is an H and an L, but, you know, to go with the, you know, going with certain things, and, you know, I don't want to kind of go in this, but there is, in the negative space, if you follow the negative space, there is that shape which we generally don't want to have in here. You know, when you're kind of working with logos, there's a certain shape that you don't want to have. Now, the whole shape isn't there, but you can see what I'm kind of getting at. There's a certain shape in here, which, you know, maybe I'm overthinking it, but, you know, but at the same time, you know, just, you always have to look for what's in the hidden spaces. But for me, the story here is how you know, is the growth and helping them fly and helping them do stuff. But there is something in this, how this butterfly is coming out of the cocoon, and you know, I don't have the time to kind of explore it too much, but the simplicity of this kind of idea, you know, could work, but I would like to maybe see a little bit more exploration of the cocoon. Maybe the cocoon's just too big. I know it's, you know, so for example, in the photo here, the butterfly, I don't know if this has just probably been done in Photoshop or whatever, but the butterfly is, you know, sort of about 1.5 times the size of the cocoon. But here the butterfly is the same size as the cocoon, maybe a little bit smaller. So maybe it's a scale thing. You know, maybe this can, you know, be smaller and not take up so much kind of visual noise from it. Maybe some, you know, maybe that's kind of where it needs to be kind of getting to. With it. It's funny because I think Greg's saying some stuff just as I'm actually doing it. Like, he's making suggestions and I'm kind of reading his mind and doing some stuff in advance. You know, maybe it's a balance thing. Still not sure about these crosses, but, you know, so if there was no crosses and the cocoon was smaller, then that white isn't going to be take up as much visual space. The white here does balance up obviously with the hello loom. I try to do that in the simple one by having this white bit kind of, you know, reflect that's the yellow and the white. Again though, this is a great logo concept. I really like it, and I really like the name as well. You know, but it's just trying to figure out a way to get this to balance. I think this is too heavily weighted on the left right now. The butterfly needs to be the key element in this logo because it kind of says, you know, it says everything about it. And so I would just kind of, the text, I really like the text. As was mentioned earlier, you might want to think about the tagline. You probably want to make that a little bit bigger. Does it need to be in italics? Probably not. I think you could make it bigger, remove the italics, and just keep it in a thin, you know, keep it in a thin weight. Then it won't fight too much with the Hello Loom. Just kind of keep it in there. I know that, you know, it's basically, you know, the tagline there is just the English translation of Hello and Loom. But I do like that as a tagline. I think, you know, yes, a German speaker or a Romanian speaker would see that as hello world. But, you know, I think you can take creative license with it and work with that. So we're way over the 2 hour mark today. I appreciate all the people that have stayed through the video today. I've really enjoyed it. My favorite part is looking at logos. We've had quite a few submissions. We've got at least another 3 or 4 live stream worth of logos, but always looking for more. So if you're watching this on the replay or whatever, you know, please, you can submit your logo to me at ryb.rocks /logo. And you can, you know, I don't think I've got let me just check, see if I've got no, I haven't created a URL for that. I should create a graphic for that so people can see it. But as Nicole, I'm glad Nicole's just saying in the chat that she's found it very helpful today. I'm glad of that. You know, hopefully it's kind of given you some thoughts that you can go away and work with. But you're off to an amazing start. And then the same with Sharuk here. It's a super clean logo. I love the color palette. And I just think, you know, you're off to a flying start. Pardon the pun. It is off to a flying start. 2 really great logos this week to look at, and great futures ahead, I am sure. So yeah, as Greg says, logos today had great potential. Go crush it. So let's leave it on that positive note, folks. Let's go crush it. Have a great couple of weeks. I'll see you on the next live stream, and you know, you never know, miracles may happen and I may get some new videos done for the channel in between now and then. We shall see what happens. But the internet gods played well with us tonight. I had no technical issues. That's a first, so things are looking up. So until I see you next time, everyone, stay creative, and I'll see you in 2 weeks' time. Bye for now.